Click the link showing channel here over at SubScribe. So Disney's billion-dollar hotel failure. The thing is, Disney or Star Wars was 77, and Disney came along with 2015, and they started their movies, and then the hotel came somewhere after that, and the park had the Millennium Falcon mock-up, which looks pretty cool. Don't get me wrong. But this is like striking while the iron's hot, that if you had a hotel Disney tie-in, if they had worked a deal with Lucas in 1979, when Star Wars fever was at an insane peak, and for a taste of that, you can go back on YouTube and watch. There's plenty of videos of people talking about what it was kind of like Kiss, believe it or not, was a phenomenon at one time at the level of what Star Wars was. And those things are they're hard to explain nowadays because people just have those kind of things. Like even who's the biggest pop star in history right now, Taylor Swift. Even what she is and the fan base she has, it's not even comparable because it's like one small subset of fans, where Star Wars, or even Disney to their credit, was just ubiquitous in a way that nothing compares to. Anyway, so what happened, where to start, is that Disney bought the rights to Star Wars from Lucas. They made 4, he obviously never should have sold this. He should have just looked at the prequels where he had kind of got a little too Jedi, silly Ewok type of Jar Jar Binks type of stuff. He should have looked at it. He should have got a director to help him out, like Empire Strikes Back was, so phenomenal, because I think his first wife was helping him with that. And he should have licked his wounds and dusted off his ego and go, okay, well, let's learn some lessons. Instead, he got his nose bent out of shape, so he sold it. He sold some of the rights to Disney for like $4 billion, I think in 2012 or something. So 2015, they come out with the start of 4 horrible movies, and one good one I think was Rogue One, and a bunch of streaming shows that started strong and then they started to fall apart. But since they had the rights, they started incorporating the movies into the park, which it would have been a smart thing to do if the movies connected with the audience. But they didn't. People saw them just so they could finish the universe that started in 1977. That was the foundation that Disney is building upon, but the movies that they put on top of it were not strong enough to continue building the universe. And it's like they have these multi-billion-dollar Star Wars properties that they're planning on making a dozen streaming shows on. And the simple answer to that is, just, can you make better movies? And I'm like, what do you mean, Nazi? Just, can you make them look like the original Star Wars? You know what I mean. Make the cast look like the original Star Wars. And even to say that now is politically incorrect, but it's also the truth. So you have this kind of crowd of millennial and Gen X, which would be like 40 to 60 year olds. If you're Gen X, we're getting up there, who just want to complete the cycle. So they gave Disney a chance, and it sucked. But they finished it off. They got the 3 movies under their belt. They just don't care anymore. They don't want to see it continue, and that's what happened with Solo, which, obviously, as Vegan says, was not that bad. But Disney, that people wanted to send a message to Disney. Disney screwed things up so bad that the audience is done with Star Wars entirely. See, if they had done this in the disco era in 1979, it would have been lower budget, obviously, hokey, but it would have been for kids, and it would have been a lot of fun. This just doesn't, it's just not the same. It's just not the same thing. So even having the concept nowadays of park attractions based on movies, that's not the strongest selling point like it would have been in the 70s and 80s, because the movie universe ended, thinking about the 80s, where movies were important. One of the reasons is that due to technology, it brought people so many new distractions that any one individual thing wasn't special anymore. And that kind of kicked off, somewhere in the very early 80s with the Atari 2600, and that started the whole video game phenomenon. And then, back in the days, people had you might have been in an area that had 5 channels on TV and a black and white TV set and a record player and radio, and that was it. So when you went to a concert, it was a transformative experience, like it would have been 10,000 years ago dancing around a fire. It was very, very different. And you go to concerts now and people have their cell phones, and It's honestly, it's that's why people you got to get away from stuff and go camping, go out of cell phone range, or put the phones away and go sit around a fire and get a little drum circle going. Honestly, it's a lot of fun with a little enhancements. And two, we literally did this when we started. It just kind of started spontaneously. Anyway, the changing demographics destroyed social cohesion, and that's important for things to catch fire. You have to have a connected fabric of a society. People have to be tied together, and that kind of ended in the 1990s as the country passed a bingo diversity point. And it's kind of interesting to watch because in pop culture, it meant that the old days where you had a huge percentage of the country were watching the same shows where, if you're of the age, Dallas was before my time, but I remember always hearing about, who shot JR or something, or the guy comes out of the shower and it's a dream. It's like so much of the country was familiar with that, or Bonanza or something, like those kind of John Wayne, Clint Eastwood type of movies and things. People were listening to the same talk radio shows. Like it was just different. People don't even speak the same language anymore. It's like 7-Eleven nationalism meets bowling alone. So movies are not going to matter like they used to ever. Like I don't know what you call this, like cultural phenomenon. There's not going to be cultural phenomenons like they used to be because there's too many things are so decentralized now, and that is a good thing. But it's not, like CNN and MSNBC, everything is mainstream is losing numbers and losing power because you have Steven Crowder and Tim Pool and all these other little nodes for people to kind of communicate around to these other decentralized nodes. So any one thing isn't as powerful. Anyway, Disney's not important like it used to be. It's kind of hard to explain to younger people because they don't have any experience with it. They grew up in this soulless commercial zone run by Moloch-worshipping vampires who are replacing them as fast as possible with more tractable cattle wage slaves. The last movie that had a bit of spark to it was Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't even remember the last movie I saw in the theater. I have to think about that. And the reason why is because you had the main guy, Chris Pratt, played Star-Lord, but of all his crew, he was the only human. They were played by non-Euro actors, but because they had makeup on, there was an element of social cohesion that would have been impossible if they played as human non-white actors. And I mean, nobody in the mainstream would dare to say that. Because they would just be blacklisted if they were a movie reviewer for even like, how is that possibly important? That couldn't be why the movie did so well. That was a big reason why the movie was a hit, because the audience could suspend their disbelief, which obviously is not politically correct, but it's just called correct. People hate diversity. He had a raccoon, a tree, or an ambulatory tree, and then two aliens. And then you had Chris Pratt. That's why the story worked. And it still didn't have any lasting cultural impact, as good as it was. And it was a solid movie that doesn't come along that often. But it didn't connect like Star Wars did. Nothing connected like that. Nothing will ever, because everything is just plastic, made in China, and the only people you can offend nowadays are white Christians, and as a consequence, Hollywood is disappearing. Disney tried to incorporate Star Wars into the park, but the movies weren't good enough to start a cultural fire. And to be fair, because of the demographics of the country, I think it would have been impossible for a movie to ever do that again. So having the Millennium Falcon on display for a few years would have worked as Generation X took their grandkids and they would, try to show them the excitement of the original Star Wars. But that would have been kind of about it. People want to continue an experience if something is cool, and they're willing to pay for it. If Disney Star Wars was as good as the original, then $3,000 a night hotel would be fine, but it wasn't. It's a good experience, but it's just not the real thing. And the thing is, at one point, decades ago, people were... Disney was professionals who understood audience retention And that sort of Disney is gone. And like that's difficult to explain to people under 40 that America used to be very different. And I mean across the board in every aspect. People were better and companies were much more professional. You knew that you were dealing with adults who had a bit of pride in what they were doing. Everything in America now kind of looks like high school kids are in control. And I have no doubt that the experience of the Star Wars Hotel was just missing fine points that would have been inconceivable if they had made this 40 years ago. But you can't pay people to care. And with Disney, and if you saw the energy behind the original from 77 to 83 Star Wars of people in the theaters and the cultural phenomenon it was, people very much cared about things back then. With Disney, you have a collection of people who are just doing things for a paycheck at one level, and then the ones who are pulling the strings are deliberately making woke propaganda because they're cultural Bolsheviks. This is their religion. So there's no way to get people excited about diverse Star Wars. There's no connection to people. There are just too many things wrong with Star Wars and Disney now. And also, the actors being on social media is another huge issue. How toxic the actors are, and like the media that defends them, and the Mary Sue type, they're trying to make some big deal over, Rose Tico was an issue. Not a good person for the role, but one of many bad people for the role. And so there was like this left-wing media used her to get themselves clicks and sell articles, but it just left everyone with a bad feeling about Disney, where everyone was calling each other all these kind of Frankfurt School buzzwords. And it was to the point where Mark Hamill is such a colossal douchebag with Trump's derangement syndrome that even fans of the original are done with Star Wars. Actors being on social media was a massive mistake, and the ones who either stay off of it or stay apolitical are the wise ones, or let somebody else, a PR person, just like there's got to be a company that can run multiple social media pages of celebrities just to put out like movie news or something. Anyway, so a rumor about changing the hotel is to use it for office space is probably accurate. Because people are not going to the Star Wars Hotel in a vacuum. They're going based on their theater experience, and it just was not very good. It didn't carry beyond the theater. Kids didn't play with the toys. That merchandise was not selling out. People were not buying T-shirts, and when they left the theater, the experience was over. And to compare it to back in the day, you just can't compare it to what kids were like with toys. Back in the day with these little, those little model toys and sets and T-shirts and lightsabers, which were just kind of like flashlights with like traffic cone lights. They were pretty crude, pretty rudimentary. Those like traffic lights that you just flick out. That's basically what they were back in the day. But people love that stuff. And that energy is just not there. If they had made the streaming shows look like the originals, it would have been indifferent. Like they had the chance to turn Star Wars around with The Mandalorian and Gina Carano, and it's like they just snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. They made diverse girl power in the Mando, and it just like they had the chance, and it's like they just decided to turn away from it. It's absolutely bizarre. There's the other issue with the parks not being the same fun experience that they used to be, but that's kind of a demographic and inflation problem. Thanks to your Federal Reserve for that, which are just going to get worse to the point where parks might not make sense in the future. People are complaining about the price, but that might actually work to their advantage because you keep raising the prices until you can get rid of the undesirables who tend to ruin the experience for everyone. I couldn't also imagine going to a park where they have like tiered pricing, where you're pressured, if you're going to go do it right and buy first class tickets, or to feel like a second class Euro poor and have to wait in line while you see other people go ahead of you. Like, there's no way I would be on board with that. I'd rather just go camping anyway. And kids are not begging their parents to go to the park like they used to, because the animations in the movies just don't matter like they used to. The animations were the hook that got kids young, but now just Disney doesn't have that anymore because the shows are too diverse and they don't connect with the kids. Kids want organic stories. They have to feel special, and modern Disney subtly feels wrong. It's 40-year-old flat-chested moms who are soldiers and single moms and just, girl bosses, and none of that makes sense. The kids want to see the classic square-jawed, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Chad taking charge and rescuing the girl. Women kind of belong in the kitchen, not in a war zone. Kids see their dads as the one doing the active things, and they don't want to see their moms picking up laser blasters. They want to see moms making dinner and sewing and doing that kind of stuff, being cozy. And everything about Disney is kind of upside down, as well as basically all Hollywood. It's a girl power phase that is imagine the 1979 coked up version of this. It's killing Hollywood, and that's a great thing because Hollywood needs to die. It needs a stake through its heart. It's biblically effing evil. The other thing, Disney, is it's not kids focused like it used to be. It's kind of shifted to adults who think they're children. And if they had a hotel like this in 1979, it would be cheaper, funnier, obviously less glossy, but people would take their kids and kids would enjoy it. Where the new stuff is kind of for adults to go to the park, spend a lot of money, drop some ecstasy and some benzos or something and sit back and watch a show. It's just a whole different, like the everything is just different. It's like this is not for little kids because kids didn't fall in love with the Disney movie. I don't know who the Disney movies were for, but I mean they weren't for the original audience, which I guess would be Gen X. But then the thing is, Disney kind of had, or Star Wars had enough staying power that people, even if it was before your time, like it was for some of us, you got it on reruns and you got it on VHS, and it had an impact even watching it on VHS. That's how powerful and different Star Wars: A New Hope was, where you could see this on VHS and you knew that you were seeing something legitimately special. Anyway, it's like, it's not to say it's sad. It's like people, someone said in the comments yesterday, they're like, yeah, we're done with all this because they have ruined it. And I'm just thinking like, well, you got the original stuff and you have the extended universe books and things, but there is something to be said when these people, Kathleen Kennedy liked the extended universe and she just like 1,000 books and she goes, yeah, those don't count. It's like, really? I think that Timothy Zahn guy wrote a trilogy that was pretty popular. But the thing is, they poisoned it so badly that you just look at all of it and it's just like, it'd be like going to vacation on Epstein's Island or something. There's just no interest in it. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys on the next episode.